Hey everybody, it's already August, and there's been a lot happening in the industry over the first half of this year, and we haven't been on YouTube in a while for an industry discussion video. So I thought I'd break out the camera again, talk a little bit about a couple of things we've noticed here at SmarTech Publishing lately and how they relate to what's happening in additive manufacturing. In the spirit of industry interaction, I actually want to share some thoughts on an article I read last week and see if anybody else wanted to add to the discussion or engage with us in some type of discussion on this topic. So, an article got published titled "Materials Are the Most Important Component in Additive Manufacturing." This was written by a guy, Peter Zielinski, on a great website called additivemanufacturing.media. And in this piece, Mr. Zielinski makes a pretty good observation that if you produce a part on some kind of AM system, that the user of that part only experiences the material chosen, and they don't really experience the machine itself that the part was made on. And as a result of this, his conclusion is that materials are the most important part of the industry value chain. Mr. Zielinski also said in the article that AM machines only derive value by applying a material, and their ability to solve problems are therefore entirely defined by the range of materials available for them to apply. I thought these were pretty interesting sentiments, and they made me recall similar statements that have been made by across the industry in the past. And as an industry, people have been preaching in additive manufacturing or 3D printing materials for years, and I get why. It's not like these sentiments are lost on me by any means, but what I don't hear acknowledged very often, and what I wanted to kind of contribute and see what everybody else thought, if anybody wants to engage with us in a discussion. What I don't hear acknowledged a lot is that in additive manufacturing, the range of materials that a machine can process is often a function of the machine's own capabilities and processing parameters, which really means that in order to qualify new materials for use, often there's technical challenges within the machine architecture that have to be overcome first. Some examples of this, what I'm talking about, you could take one of the simplest examples in the material extrusion printing. There's a pretty impressive range of materials available today, and we kind of, what got the industry beyond your typical PLA and ABS materials were things like better extruders and the ability for the printer to better control the thermal environment through things like heated build plates and enclosed or heated build chambers. And the same is more or less true for, say, like powder bed fusion 3D printing, where the challenges in printing materials that aren't nylon 11 or nylon 12 are that a lot of these other materials either require a higher machine operating temperature to sinter reliably, or there's a lot of refinement to the machine processing parameters to accommodate for like narrower glass transition temperatures for other plastics. Like for example, the carbon system, their sort of platform is that they're enabling better resin materials because, primarily that the printer itself is able to, print faster and work with more reactive chemistries because the materials don't necessarily have to sit in a vat, for a long extended period of time to stand up to hours and hours and hours worth of printing. That enables different chemistries and ideally better chemistries, more robust materials. So these are all examples of problems that have been solved mostly by innovating on the hardware side. The materials problems that ultimately have been solved through machine evolution. And the reason you always hear about AM materials being prohibitively expensive and really costly compared to like traditional manufacturing counterparts, it's not just that companies in the industry want to make money on materials. It's also a factor because it takes a lot of effort and cost to develop the machine settings and the equipment choices in those machines that make sure those materials work reliably without the end user having to experiment and result in a lot of failed builds. So machine manufacturers that offer some of these materials with their machines, they eat those development costs when they offer a material, and that cost has to be recouped somehow. So I just wanted to put my thoughts out there on this topic and see what everybody else thinks about what maybe the most important piece of the value chain is in additive today. I'm not necessarily saying that it's machines and that it's hardware that's the most important part, because obviously I think things like hardware and materials and software all have a high degree of interconnection and they all work kind of together equally. But I think it's important to acknowledge that in a lot of ways, the machines themselves determine what ranges of materials they can process. So maybe that it's development of machines that should be the focus, superseding development necessarily of kind of just materials, slapping materials in machines and seeing what works. And this kind of goes back to the the business environment in the industry as well. SmarTech Publishing we just published our latest industry reports on polymer additive manufacturing, and if you look at the numbers in almost every print technology segment, the hardware business generates more revenues, year over year than the associated materials businesses with those technologies. So in 2017, this is out of our latest study here, about $1.1 billion in revenue generated worldwide in polymer printing materials, but about $1.6 billion in the hardware. So we don't see that opportunity relationship between hardware and materials changing, to favor materials for almost 7 to 10 more years as the technology matures. It can be utilized on a larger scale, more closely associated with production applications where utilization rates go way up, and the material consumption becomes a bigger driver in the industry. Of course, ultimately that we expect that will happen. Materials will become the biggest revenue driver of the industry. That's still a long way off. So, in the spirit of discussion, I wanted to put some comments out there on this topic. And if anybody else wants to engage with us, you can go to our website, smarttechpublishing.com, shoot us an email, sign up on the website, share your thoughts, and maybe we'll do a follow-up video to this in the future.